how frustrating is it when your managers are underperforming? Because what does it do? It forces you as an owner to then go and basically handhold them or do their job. Nothing pisses me off more than having to go in and do something that you've already trained somebody on and that they should know what to do and that they just don't. So what to do if your managers are underperforming? Welcome back to the Restaurant Growth Accelerator Podcast. I am your host, Andrew Scott, and today what we are talking about is what to do if your managers are underperforming. Now, if you don't know who I am, I've been a multi-unit location owner for almost 20 years. Now I own OwnerShift, which helps restaurant owners get more freedom with their time, make more profit on the bottom line, and also grow their sales. With me, I have Nathan Voulgaris. He is our special projects director, or whatever title we gave him. But basically what he does is come up with all the cool systems that we use inside for our restaurant owner clients. He comes from a background of multi-unit leadership, over 700 employees, and some crazy amount of sales, like 60 or 80 million. I don't even know how much per year you guys are doing, but okay, 80 million. I probably should write that down at some point. But let's dive into it. How frustrating is it when your managers are underperforming? Because what does it do? It forces you as an owner to then go and basically handhold them or do their job. And let's face it, nothing pisses me off more than having to go in and do something that you've already trained somebody on and that they should know what to do and that they just don't. I swear, it just gets me frustrated, a little blood pressure boiling here. So let's talk about it. So let's first start with some of the roots of underperforming. Usually people are underperforming for a couple of reasons. Usually could be a lack of training. That's something, right? Now, actually, we'll expand into that in a second. So it could be a lack of training. That could be an issue. It could be the wrong person for the position. It could be that there's also some sort of a roadblock for that particular manager that they don't know how to handle, and they need a little bit of coaching to get over whatever that roadblock is. So those are usually the three that I find as being the culprits. Because very rarely have I ever seen a manager that was purposely doing stuff improperly. But even if so, that would still be the wrong person for the position. But very rarely have I seen that. And so let's talk about that. The first thing I would say is a lack of training. So when I talk about training a manager, first question I would ask you, and I'm speaking you, whoever's listening right now, for you, if you go to train a manager, show me all of your processes for exactly what a manager does, when they should do it, how they should do it. And if they cannot simply pick it up and read it without your involvement at all, and for them roughly being able to do that job decently well based on all the stuff that's already written down and there and available for them, if it's not that good, there's still work to be done.
Then you're lucky if they do perform without it.
Yeah. So they're performing in spite of your training, not because of your training.
That's right.
So what I would say is that a lot of cases we try and train managers, and here's how we do it. Oh, well, here's how I do it. And you show them whatever you do. Great. So that gives them part of it. Or it's on the job training. Here, follow me around while I do this and this and this and this and this. Right. So it's very kind of haphazard training. There's not really a structure to it. And it's not very, very clear. And oftentimes I've been through this before where someone asks, well, hey, Andrew, why do we do it this way? And I'm like, because that's how I said we do it. Like who here's parents has been like, because I said so. Well, because I said so is not a reason, right? We just don't want to explain the whole reasoning behind it. But I would tell you, if they knew the reasoning behind it, they'd probably be more inclined to follow it, right? Like, why do all employees have to show up 10 minutes early? When you explain it, a manager goes, oh, okay, like that makes more sense. Versus if you just said, because I said so, then they're like, well, that's stupid. I'm not going to do that. You know what I mean? Like, so it's again, this is an example that, I know a lot of employees have friction with, but that's the reason I say it, because again, we're not asking them to show up early, unpaid. We are asking them so that they can actually clock in on time and be ready for work, right? Like, you need to be able to start at that time. So therefore you need to be here a little bit earlier to get your uniform on, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, we don't need to go into that because that's, it's a whole different topic. But the point is, we need to have a defined training program for the managers. And it's interesting because I hear so many owners say, Andrew, like whatever happened to common sense? Where did common sense go? And here's what I tell them. I said, common sense is not common to someone who's never done it before. And here is why, is because there is no common anymore. People have different upbringings. They can come from different places. They can come from different backgrounds. They can come from different, value perspectives and the things that they value. They come from different personality styles. So there is no common anymore, right? There is no common sense because there is no common anymore, right? So the common needs to be what we train people on. That becomes the common sense, is our training, right? And if it is not really spelled out in our training, then you cannot expect someone to know how to do that, right? Or adhere to a certain set of values if we don't explain them, right? So training is one of the biggest things when it comes to managers, because oftentimes the manager will be underperforming. How come their labor is over by 2%? I'm like, okay, so what are the strategies that you train them on to be able to get their labor down? And they're like, well, they should just know. And I'm like, well, not necessarily. If you're hiring an experienced manager, then the tools they have in their tool belt or whatever they were trained before, but that might not be the same way that you would want it done, right? So there can be a difference in that. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about there when it comes from that training. Now, another thing too, are the expectations clear? So Nathan, tell me a little bit more about that one.
So, I think you touched a little bit on it already, but when I think of expectations for a manager, I'll expand on the piece that you brought up around employees being 10 minutes early, for their shift. The expectation for managers is that they absolutely understand the culture, the philosophies, the brand, the whys behind why we do things the way we do, and that they ultimately become an ambassador for the brand. They're not everybody's best friend. The expectation is that you are managing the expectations of your team. So there's a lot of expectation in there. And expectation is a tricky word when I use it like that because it has to be clear. It can't just be, I expect you to figure that out. It's what are the policies? What policies do I need to train you on? What policies do I need to have you model for me or role play with conversations with me? What routine are you going to be on? As a manager, you're responsible for interviewing and hiring and training. When are you doing that? Are you equipped for it? Have I tested you on it? Have I sat in on your interviews? Have I sat in on you doing training? Have I, so again, the expectation on the role can often just be as simple as a job description, right? What is your job description? What are you responsible for? Then it can be as simple as a very detailed training plan that covers the policies, the procedures, and starts to build out a routine. Then the next piece of that expectation is about inspecting what you expect and trust but verify. And the training process and how you model training and expectations for your manager is going to be how they, ideally, not even ideally, you're going to expect it from them and even say it. This is how I expect you to train and model and set expectations with your team. That's why I'm holding you to account this way. So I guess that's, without going into very specific detail of I expect you to write a schedule at 3:00 on a Tuesday, though I would absolutely go there, by the way. But there is no ambiguity. There is no uncertainty. It is absolutely spelled out that this is the process to do the job. And even if a manager comes in, an experienced manager from somewhere else, and they say, at this place, I did it this way. It's like, that's a really interesting story. But I'm taking you through this very detailed step-by-step daily, weekly, monthly training program that I've developed. And when you get through that, I would love to hear ideas from you that you would like to put into place. But until that's done, we're just going to make sure that you have the tools on your belt to do the job and that there's no question about what's expected.
Yeah. And what's so interesting too, is I've just been thinking about this as you're talking about it. A lot of people hire a manager expecting that they are going to come in and succeed in spite of let me put it this way. A lot of people are hiring managers expecting them to come in and come with all of the stuff that we would normally provide with training. They're expecting them to come in and fix their lack of management training. Mm-hmm. And it almost like, you just come in and know everything. Well, I'm paying you more money, so therefore you should know all the stuff, right? You should already have that knowledge and be able to fix it. I shouldn't even have to tell you anything. So you're almost expecting a miracle worker to come in, because there are some managers that will come in and have lots of experience, but they've gained it from training somewhere else. So what you are then importing is someone else's philosophies, beliefs, and training into your organization. Now that may be okay for you. That may be okay, but you also have to look at it and say, okay, is it a similar enough environment that exactly what they did there is going to work here? That could be possible, right? And when you're hiring a manager without any training and without the verification and stuff like that through the training process, you're just assuming that they were also good, right? Which may or may not be the truth. So, because there are good managers and there are not so good managers. And we also have to get them into our own beliefs on how we do things. Because maybe there, it's like, one strike and you're out. Well, maybe you believe that, and maybe you don't, right? It could be a totally different environment. And so we often just hire them, and we have these massive expectations, and we have that despite our lack of training. And so when things don't work out, we got to ask ourselves, like, how would someone be successful in that environment, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's, it's like that plant, the plant analogy. When a plant is not performing well, we change the environment. We give it more sunlight. We give it more nutrients. We give it more whatever. We don't just like rip the plant out and say, well, you were a terrible plant. I'll be honest. I know nothing about plants other than that. My girlfriend's the plant person. So
that's all.
Anyway, house looks beautiful with plants. Do I know how plants live? No. I just know they look nice. I would have a plastic plant if it was me. But anyway, so talking about the management side, I find that's what so many people do. And they're like, well, I'm just going to hire a manager, as if that's going to fix everything. Well, guess what? It often doesn't. It often backfires, because then you're putting all of your faith in this person to be able to do everything the way you'd want it. And let's face it, without the training and without the parameters with them to be able to work in as a manager, how are they going to be successful for your organization? And that's the piece that I want to make clear, because it might be how you did things there, but here's how we do them here. And so what you want, you're looking when you're hiring, you are looking for the potential, you are looking for the characteristics, and you are looking for some experience. But I always, when I looked for managers, wanted enough experience so that they would be knowledgeable, but not so much experience that they would be unable to shift their thinking.
Yeah. That they're not uncoachable.
Well, exactly.
They have the answers. They're ready to learn and being open to a different way of being. Yeah.
Because the philosophy, and I'll give you a perfect example. There was a coffee place. I mean, it was a Tim Hortons. We hired a manager that came from a Tim Hortons background. If you're American, picture Dunkin' Donuts. But basically, we hired a manager that went through that. And their whole philosophy there was, we just hire anyone that walks, right? And they would hire whoever, and they would just fire quickly. And the managers that were there were just expected to pick up the slack, and they didn't train people very well. They didn't do anything overly well. And because anytime you go to this place, there's always mistakes. It's always like, anyway, just good times. But the point is, that was their philosophy, is that managers were the whip belt crackers. They were the slave drivers, if you will. They were the people that kept everyone in line and made sure everyone followed that. And they didn't train people well, and they just assumed that everyone was stupid. And if they didn't show up, they were a bad person. And if they, and that was just not the way that I viewed the world. It was not the way that our organization viewed the world. We view that people are good and they need more training, and, that people can do the job. We just need to allow them the environment to thrive, and people can stay and work for us for a really long time. Whereas in that environment, if someone stayed for 3 months, that was great, but they just hired somebody else to do the job, and they just didn't really care about that because they didn't really train them. So there's just a different way of viewing the world. And so you don't want to import someone else's view of the world into your business without, providing a framework around, hey, this is what we believe here, and here's why we believe it. Because you might have to get them to unlearn a few things that they did over time, right? So that's just kind of one thing I wanted to point out. So now the second thing that we talked about is when it comes to employees, first we talked about the training, but sometimes, did we hire the right person? So when we are hiring, we've got to wonder, like, what are the things that we are looking for? So Nathan, what are some of the things that you look for when you looked and hired for managers?
Oh, I mean, the first piece, and I think probably even the most important piece is, I look in the mirror first and say, am I hiring a person and then going to have to develop a system for that individual, or do I have a rock solid structure and system that I'm going to bring the right person into? So that's the first part of it. Yeah. When I first started hiring, and even hiring for managers years and years ago, my trainer, if you can call him that, I guess, told me, when you sit down with somebody and you're going to hire them for a position, you're going to know in the first 2 to 3 minutes if you're going to hire that person. If you wouldn't see yourself hanging out with them after work and having a beer, don't hire them. And I mean, years later, I'm here to say that is a terrible philosophy. I get it, but it's a terrible way to find the right people that round out your team. So, I mean, the first things that I look for now, having, set myself on fire several times, is, intelligence, problem solving, openness, coachability. Because I figure if you can give me enough blank page, I'm going to be able to draw a really great picture and paint a beautiful portrait with you. But if you're going to come in and the first things that I hear out of your mouth are, oh yeah, I was instrumental in this process, I developed this, I did this. If I hear a lot of I's and me's, it's a turnoff for me. I want to hear, my team was able to turn the ship around this way, and we and us, and what we learned or where I fell down, humble, open, and giving success away. If I don't hear those things from a manager, they better blow me away somewhere else, because I'm already sitting there going, oh, I gotta have to dig a little bit deeper here because I don't love this so far. And I'll even confront that with them though. Because here's the thing about interviews. It's your opportunity to get to know somebody, how they work, how they think. And I think that's so much more important than a resume. I don't care if you've been a manager at 6 other places or this one huge multi-unit. I just don't care. I want to know you. And that's why we do in-person interviews. So I guess that's what I would throw out is again, if they were turning me off with a lot of I's, I might just say, listen, I hear a lot of you in what you're saying. I did this, you did that, or so-and-so.
That's not what a manager's about.
No. And I'll just say, why is that? Why did you feel like you were the one driving everything and you were solo out there? Or tell me.
And if that was the case, if you were the one driving everything, that means you're not a great leader.
You're probably not a people developer, that's for sure, or a strong communicator, right? And again, I'm just going to be honest in interviews with those questions. I'm just going to put them on the table. Awkward or not, this is my opportunity to either get a great manager or make concessions for a maybe manager. And I don't have time in my life for a maybe manager. I need the right person. So that's I guess how I would capture that. There's a lot of questions I would throw out, but that's always my intention.
Hey, real quick, if you're a multi-unit restaurant owner or you're looking to become one, I've identified the 3 deadliest mistakes that are killing most restaurants right now. And more importantly, I'll show you how to avoid these exact mistakes. Just grab my free copy of the Multi-Unit Restaurant Playbook by going and clicking on the link in the description below. Inside, you'll discover my proven system for building a restaurant empire that runs on autopilot and the mistakes you must avoid if you want to stay profitable and scalable. So get the free playbook and transform your business today. Yeah, and I think for me, when I'm interviewing, one of the things I learned as well is I made the mistake of hiring people who could do the job, whereas I'm looking for people who will do the job. Mm-hmm. So what I mean by that is I once had this interview with a guy named Alex, and basically what happened was, he had been working for us in a capacity as a supervisor, and I'm like, well, hey, give me an example of a time where you upheld a policy with a team member. Should be a very basic task for like a lead, And he's like, well, I didn't really do that because I'm not the manager. But if I was the manager, then I would do it. And I'm like, I didn't like that answer. But I convinced myself to hire him anyway. And guess what? When he got into the management position, guess what he did? Didn't do the shit that he needed to do because the people that are going to do the things that you need them to do will have already done the things in a different environment, even without the title, right? So what I'm looking for are examples of when people did stuff, even when they didn't have the position or didn't have the pay or didn't have that. I'm looking for them to evidence those behaviors before they even get the position, because then I am reasonably assured that they will continue those patterns with me. We probably need to train them and finesse, how they do it, but the fact that they will do it, because it's not we need to train them that they should do it. We just have to train them a little bit more on how to do it. It's a lot harder to train someone that they should do something, right? So when I'm hiring for management, that's what I'm looking for. And I'm looking for them to say, hey, like, this is what we did here. This is what I've done in these past positions. I'm looking for those types of things. Now, another thing that I want to make sure people aren't doing is we don't want you to hire a resume, because just because they've been a manager at 3 other places does not mean they were a good manager. Just because you graduated high school does not mean you got straight A's. You could have gotten C's. You still graduated. Which one do you want working for you? Now, just to clarify, I'm not saying that education in high school will have anything to do with your leadership abilities. But for example, whether you're a great manager or a poor manager, you still have manager on your resume, right? And you don't know which one that is. So that's why you don't just hire a resume. Oh, well, this person's been a manager at 3 other places. They should come in here and fix all my problems. Well, no, they won't. And so we shouldn't be hiring management to come and fix all of your problems as well. Because here's the other thing that I see so many owners do is that they'll hire a manager and they won't know what a manager should do. They don't know what good looks like. They don't know what the outcomes of a manager should be. And so therefore, they just have no idea, and they just let the manager run the show until eventually they get wise to the fact that it's not happening the way that it should, and then they have to go back, and they end up restarting and rehiring an entire team, basically like putting out fires and trying to salvage the situation. So don't bring people into a situation that's not fully developed, right? You can't expect someone to do the job. Let me clarify this. I was going to say you can't expect someone to do a job better than you, but that's not true. I think that you cannot expect someone to do a job in your restaurant to like be the savior of your restaurant if it's already failing. You know what I mean? Unless they have a history of doing that, and they're definitely not going to do it at a regular manager's salary. They're going to need to get paid a hell of a lot more to come in, because otherwise, if someone was really that good, why would they work for whatever you're offering them, assuming that it's lower than, you know what I mean? So just things we have to think about. Another thing to be wary too is when we're hiring managers, they should be looking to have a step up. There should be a defined reason why they come and work with you. I remember I brought in someone from a different company, and they actually took a reduction of salary to be with us. And I didn't understand that. I'm like, why would someone take a reduction in salary to come work with us? Turns out they weren't very good, and that's why. So, because they were probably going to get let go from their current position. So I learned that lesson, lasted all of like 6 weeks with us. So, but just a few things when you're doing that. So if your managers aren't performing, we have to go back to the structure and the training around it, that, the job should be the confines of the job, and the structures we have around it. Next thing is, did we even get the right person in there? Because maybe they weren't the right person. We just put them in and our expectations were too high, right? That's the thing I see all the time. Now, if indeed a manager is there and is the right hire and you did train them and they're still struggling, sometimes it can be that there is a roadblock that they need to be coached through. Right? Because maybe there's something in them that needs to be adapted. Now, I'll give you an example. I had this one employee once, who was in a high level position with me. And basically what happened was, he wasn't getting the job done the way that he should do it. And I asked him, like, hey man, like, what's going on? Like, these things should be done. How come they're not getting done? He's like, there's just so much on my plate. It's so overwhelming. And, basically, I've got all these like 50 things I need to do. And so I'm like, hey, like, so maybe the roadblock is just the overwhelm needs a better system to be able to attack the things that need to get done. There's time management at the end of the day. So I'm like, hey, well, let's write down all these things that are stressing you out. So one by one, we wrote them all down. And I'm like, okay, so how long is it going to take you to get this one done? Oh, probably like 30 minutes. Okay, what about this one? Oh, 45. What about this one? Oh, about 2 hours. And so we went down all the things and we're like, okay, let's look at your calendar and let's block out time where you're going to do all those things and to get caught up again. And sure enough, it was only like 10 hours of stuff. Like it wasn't like insurmountable, right? But in the brain, it was overwhelming for him. And sometimes for some people, when they get overwhelmed, they just become less efficient, right? Instead of doing, they stop because they don't know where to start. And so by just coaching him through that, he was able to get all those things done. We blocked it out in the calendar. And then I said, hey, I'm going to text you at the end of each of these like blocks to make sure you did the things, and had some accountability in there. And sure enough, he did them, because to be honest, I even forgot to text him, which don't do, by the way.
No. If you want that text, you tell them to send it. That's where I would go, but
yeah. But the point is, I mean, I totally forgot because it was on a weekend, and anyway, I was doing whatever. But point is, that's kind of what I need to be coached through. Or maybe there's a limiting belief that they have to get through. Maybe like I had this one manager who just believed like, oh, this person's never going to be able to, do this one task. And so, we had to go through this block that they had mentally around, well, I mean, what makes you think that? Oh, well, because they're just not going to be able to. I'm like, okay, that's not really a reason. So let's dive into this. Why do you believe that? And they're like, well, because people in the past haven't done what I wanted them to do. I'm like, okay, great. So like, what did you try back then to help? And so we just had to go through a coaching conversation around how do we get them to then shift their belief that it could be possible. That maybe what was missing was the training, because sure enough, as soon as I asked this person to do the thing, they did it. It was great. So like there was just this mental roadblock that was in place. And so sometimes if someone isn't doing something or isn't performing, there might be something that they haven't brought up to us that needs to get addressed. That is the limiting factor for them to not be able to do that thing. Maybe there's a belief, maybe there's a skill set. Like I've had people that, like one person wasn't very good with computers and our schedule was all done online. So we needed to literally sit down and be like, hey, here's computer basics. And maybe that's something. Now, granted, is that something we should be spending our time training someone on? Debatable, but that was just what we had to do for that person. And I knew that the training of doing that was well worth it in order to get us to the level that we needed to be, because that person had so many other great characteristics, right? So sometimes there's a block. And so until we've gone through all of those things, is it us? Is it the training? Is there a roadblock that is in the way that we might not know about? So we have to have a conversation about that. Or is it maybe that, our expectation is different because we hired the wrong person and now we're stuck with it. So now we got to figure out, okay, how do we make this work? Those are usually the things before we go, oh, it's the manager and they're bad, right? We have to go through this logical process and actually go, hey, like, is this something that they were trained on, that they should be doing, that they were aware of, that they know how to do, and that we've also talked through them and we've talked about, hey, why isn't this getting done? Because we also can't just come to them one morning and be like, hey, how come you're not getting this done? You're manager, you should be doing your job. Like we actually need to be like, hey man, so like I noticed this isn't getting done. Like, what do we need to do to make sure this happens? Like what's going on for you that's preventing this? And then maybe there's a reason and we talk about it and we solve it. But I just find so many owners are hesitant to have those tough conversations, and they're so easy to blame the person. And when that happens, we don't actually solve the problem. We just create enemies and basically create a situation where we're going to lose that manager a lot faster. Because before we start with the accountability, we actually need to start with trying to seek to understand before we get to the accountability piece of it, So that's kind of my 2 cents on it.
it's a good 2 cents. That's a big 2 cents. I mean, the one thing I would add to all of that, if we kind of circle back to, what we wanted to talk about, in this session, what to do with it when a manager is underperforming. Here's the thing I always say is, if you sit down to give feedback to a manager, right, you're not getting this done, or I'm differentiating you here from all of my managers or whatever. If that is shocking to them, like shocking, then you need to look in the mirror and find what is missing, what was missing from the expectation, what was missing from the reporting, what was missing from development conversations that they are shocked. I think back to the first ever bonus check I ever got as a chef, and it was a good bonus check. It was like, I don't know, $8,000. It was a significant chunk of money, and it was going to be my first bonus check, and I was so excited to get it. And my boss at the time came in, and he was like, "Hey, it's bonus day. It's first bonus check in your position. Are you excited?" And I've been looking forward to this for years. And he handed me a check that said, had my name on it, Nathan Voulgaris, $8,000, had dates, everything on it. And I was just like, I was so excited. And he's like, what are you going to spend it on? And I was like, well, I had to do some repairs to my car. I'm going to do this with it, that. And he said, oh, hey, I forgot to sign it. Just give it back to me for a sec. And I handed it back, and he ripped it up in front of me. He just ripped it up. So he took the time to get me excited and then ripped it all up. And then he said, what was your labor last week? And I was like, I don't know. I think we were pretty much on target. And he's like, wrong. What was food cost out of the store last week? And I was like, well, I think we're about 0.5. He's like, wrong. And he ran through a bunch of metrics that I knew were my responsibility that I didn't know, and that I was not performing at the level I needed to be. And he said, that's why I ripped up this check. And he's like, now I know you are really mad at me right now, right? Like you probably want to punch me. And I was like, well, I'm pretty upset. And he's like, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to just take the rest of the day off, go home. And I want you to think about what just happened here today and why I chose to bring you this message this way, right? You know the expectations. Unless you can sit here and say, I have no idea what my targets are, and then we'll have a different conversation. But you know what they are, but you don't know them. And you don't have a plan for that then. You were just sitting here waiting for your bonus check. And he's like, that is not what I expect from my leadership team. And I want to give you that check, buddy. More than anything, I want you to have it. But I want you to earn it. And that always stuck with me, right? Once I got over my anger and I thought about it, I realized that I didn't deserve it. Just because of my title didn't mean I deserved it. And I changed that day. Never again would I not know exactly what my team was doing or what was expected of me. So anyways, I don't suggest everybody go and do that. This was a different time. This was a different era. And I actually had a good relationship with this human. So I don't suggest you go into your stores and do something quite like that. Unless you're willing to have that person quit and walk out in the moment. But it changed, and it made me understand the importance of the clarity of expectation, but also reward comes with performance. And that, when we talk about underperforming, to me, that's the key element. Do you actually know what performing well looks like? Because if you know that, and you can measure yourself against that expectation as a manager, then we know that you're not performing at that level, so you're underperforming it. And now it just turns into, what do we do about it? Instead of, I don't know, that anger or ambiguity in the moment.
Yeah. Now, I will add to that and say, yes, do not rip checks up in front of people. It would be better to drill them on that stuff and make them understand that in advance. Now, let me just say that. But having said that, what really stuck out to me and what was kind of going along with what we were talking about earlier is that when we're hiring people, what I'm always looking for from all of my employees, but especially management, is initiative, right? Because you want to be proactive with those numbers that you are responsible for, not reactive. We shouldn't be expecting the owner to come down and give us our numbers and tell us what to do about it. That's not what a manager's job is. A manager's job is to own those numbers and to start changing them before the owner even understands it, knows it, and comes to us with it. Mm-hmm. That is our job, is to have that initiative. And I will tell you that you cannot train initiative. Initiative comes from a choice that people make, right? Yeah. So, you can't train it. He could have said to you, yeah, you need to take initiative. Well, what does that mean? But you had to go home and think about it. Okay, I need to then take this on myself to do things differently because of this reason. Like, you had to make that choice. Nobody can make that choice for you. And so when we're hiring, we are always looking for initiative. And with your managers, we need to have that initiative. Now, let me pair this with one other thing, though, is that you need to allow your managers to have initiative. Well, Andrew, but of course I always have, allow them to have initiative. You probably don't. Now, I'll tell you why. It's because you probably give them all the stats that they need. Mm-hmm. You probably go to them and say, well, here's what we're going to do about it. Because it's easier and faster if you go and tell them what to do, right? But it doesn't force them to think about it. And It also doesn't set the expectation, right? So then what you should say is, hey guys, at our management meeting next week, we're going to review all of our numbers on our management team call with all of our managers. And on that, if your numbers are under, you also need to have a plan on what to do with that, right? You need to set that expectation. Then when that call shows up, you say, hey, what are your numbers? You over there, what's your numbers? All right, what's your plan, right? Then it's an expectation for them to already have taken that initiative. Now, if they're caught flat-footed, they're going to be embarrassed. And that's okay, because that's probably a lesson that they need to learn. But then if it happens a couple more times, you're like, hey, man, this may not be the position for you because you're not taking that initiative. But the point is, initiative is what we're looking for, but you also need to evidence what that looks like and what the expectations are. What does initiative look like? But here's one thing I will tell you. Let me end with a story. And I have told this story 1,000 times in talking to people, is that I once had a manager, and this manager would eventually become our regional manager. But she was a store manager, and what happened was someone was paying with a debit card, and we only had one debit terminal at the time. And basically their debit card was it was a chip card, and it was all like mangled or something. They probably had it like together with duct tape or something like that. And so they put it in to insert it, and it broke off. And so there was like this piece of card inside the debit terminal. And I was at a different location at that point in time. And I came in the next day, and I saw that we had one of these stands that had our debit machine like bolted to the counter so nobody could steal it or swap it with a fraudulent one or whatever. So we had it bolted there. And all of a sudden I noticed that the debit machine was gone. And so I'm like, where the hell's the debit machine? Like, what's going on? And so like I go at the back. I'm like, where's our debit machine? She's like, oh, well, yesterday, this is what happened. And so I looked on the phone list in the back. I called the POS company. I gave them our merchant number, which I had put on the phone list for situations like this. So yeah, I called them. I told them where we were at. I told them what had happened, and they are shipping out a new one. It should be here before open today. And I went and took the extra step to take it off. And then we were using our portable debit machine that we use for catering orders. We'd be using that yesterday to make sure we didn't lose any sales because of it. That's why I didn't call you, but it's going to be here today, and I'm going to drill this all back in as soon as that's done. And I just stood there, and I'm like, I've never had a manager in my life have that initiative to go and solve all of those problems.
I'm putting a raise through for you today.
Basically, it was like, well, shit. Okay. And I was like, okay, well, just so you know, there is a key that we could use to like get it off so you wouldn't have to like drill through it or whatever. But I mean, she literally went home, grabbed her drill from like her mom back at home and like brought it in. And like that's the type of initiative we're talking about. And so what I will say to you is that you can't train that. Now, she went on to become a regional manager and extremely talented. And so the reason I say that is because no manager had ever done that, and no manager has done that since. But that's always been my gold standard ever since that point, because that's what I would have done. Because as an owner, it's like, well, no, I've got to figure it out. What do you do in that situation? So what you're looking for is the effort to try and solve it. Not necessarily to get the right answer, right? But you're looking for the effort and initiative to try and solve it and to take ownership of the situation. Now, if you find people like this, these are the people that you want to keep. Mm-hmm. Right? Because you can train them what to do, but you can't train them to take initiative or that they should do it. Right? That's what we're looking for. So when a manager is underperforming, it could be a variety of reasons. But honestly, I think a lot of it comes down for most people to the training. They could be the wrong person. They may not have the initiative. But either way, the way to solve it is to have a conversation with them about what the expectations are, find if there's a roadblock or what it is, but evidence what that expectation is. And they then will either take the ball and run with it or not. And either way, you will have your answer as to whether that person is going to be the right person for your position. Okay. Well, Nathan, thank you for being on here today. It was a pleasure as always. And guys, for everybody listening, feel free to give us a 5-star review, leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. And if you found this helpful, please share it with another restaurant owner so we could also bring some value and help them make more money and have more freedom with their time as well. All right, guys, we'll see you on the next one. This episode is brought to you by Ownership Training, where we help restaurant owners increase their profits while spending more time with their family. And if you want to know exactly what it would take to grow your profit margin to 15% and beyond while spending more time with your family, my team has a few spots open this week for a free 15-minute restaurant assessment call. Just click the book a call link in the description and we'll show you the exact frameworks we're using to help our clients do this in as little as 6 to 8 weeks. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.